DreAllDay.com.
Dre Baldwin, DreAllDay.com, WorkOnYourGame.com. I want to explain to you all a simple idea that will help you understand how you can build more discipline into what you're doing, regardless of the circumstances of your life. Because even though I can sit here and tell you about disciplines that I have or what my morning routine is, or you can hear what somebody else does and how they do things, you can look at their thing and you can say to yourself, okay, it's cool that you can do that or they can do that, but my situation is different. Like you got you got 5 more kids than they have, or your work situation is not the same, or your home life is not the same, or you can't go to the gym at the same time they go to the gym, or you just can't arrange your schedule the same way that they arrange theirs. Understanding that, I'm going to introduce you to this principle that I call the box, or just want you to understand how this all works. The way the box works, and I'm the one who did this drawing, so these are boxes. That's what these are supposed to be, boxes. But the principles I want you to get is that when it comes to discipline, one of the things that I tell people is that we want to do the same things the same way every time. That's what discipline is about. That's what process is. That's what a system is. That's what the structure is about, is you want to do the same things the same way every time. You think of a company like McDonald's, Jiffy Lube, Amazon, Apple. The reason that they are who they are is, of course, they have good products and good services, hopefully, but it's also because they're so consistent in what they do that we know exactly what we're going to get from them every time we go to them. And that's why people continue to go to them and continue to give them money, because they know exactly what they're going to get from those entities, from those organizations every time. And you want to be the exact same way when it comes to anything where you want to create consistent results. So if you want to be in good physical shape, what do you have to do? You got to work out consistently. You want to have good physical health. Not only do you work out, but also you got to pay attention to what you're putting in your body consistently. If you have solid relationships in life, whether with your kids, with your significant other, with your friends, with your business partners, colleagues, what do? You have to keep in touch and do things to continually build on that relationship. And the other person has to do the exact same thing. So the same things the same way every time is a principle for creating consistent results over an extended period of time. The challenge with this is we get variables. That's the next point here. Variables. And what variables are anything that you don't control yourself, but it's a thing that actually exists in your life, and you have to figure out a way to deal with it and work within it. So a variable could be something like your significant other is a variable, because even though you're with them and you probably have a bunch of things about them that you like and agree with and admire, you don't actually control them as a person. So you don't control what your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife is going to do on a day-to-day basis. You don't control if they get sick. You don't control if they need to take a day off from work. You don't control if one day they're having a bad day and they need your attention and you weren't planning on giving them an hour of your time because you were planning on doing something at work, or you were planning on being at the office. You were planning on being at the gym. You were planning on doing one of 10 other things, but now you have to give attention to them because they need it, and because they're significant in your life, you want to give them that time. If you have kids, you don't control if your kid gets sick. You don't control if your kid wakes up in the middle of the night and they can't sleep, so now you didn't get all your sleep. You don't control those things. You don't control if, for example, you have a pet and the pet is causing some kind of issue, or your dog gets a broken leg, or your cat eats something and you got to take him to the vet. Now you got to pay for that. Now you got to take time out of your day for that. Those variables you have no control over. But here's what I want you to understand, because here's the part that a lot of people get thrown off when it comes to the boxes, is that, and I'll explain the boxes in a second, is that every time a variable comes into your life, what it does is it throws you off of your schedule. So let me explain how this box works before I go any further. Same things the same way every time is basically taking your life and all the things that you want to accomplish and all the things that you want to get done consistently, and you build this box. The box is basically, let's say you have a 10 by 10 box. We'll just use that. I'm just throwing those numbers out. Your box is 10 feet by 10 feet wide. Those inside of the box is everything that you can 100% control. Okay. And the fewer variables you have in your life, the larger your box. So if you have no variables in your life, meaning you're single, you have no pets, you have no kids, you don't have a significant other, you don't have anyone who can really, there's no situation, there are very few elements in your life that can give you a phone call and say, hey, I need you to do this right now because it's needed, like a kid, a significant other, or a pet. Maybe you got family members and maybe you would need it. But other than that, you don't have any other constraints, or your box is really, really big. Now, a person who has a husband or wife, they got 5 kids and they got 3 pets and they have a very demanding job, their box is a little bit smaller, not because they don't have as much power. The box is not about how much power you have. The box is about how many constraints you have. Because every time you add a constraint, your box gets a little bit smaller. And the constraint is represented in the form of a variable, because the variable is something that you don't control. So if you have no pets and then you go get 3 dogs, now you have 3 variables. Because each one of those dogs is a variable, and something can happen with the dog. And now, because you decided to take that dog under your care, now they become a constraint for you, because you got to deal with them if something happens. That's a variable. So every time you add a variable, like a significant other, a kid, a pet, we'll just use those as examples, but there are other variables that you may have in your life. Those become constraints. Instead of being things that can hold you back from achieving your outcome, once you look at them as constraints, meaning, okay, your box is not 10 by 10 anymore because you got married, you had 3 kids, and you got 2 dogs. So now your box is, let's say, is 8 by 8. So now inside of that 8 by 8 box, here's what you're going to do. You're going to put everything that you can control. So the things that you can't control stay outside of the box. So you have open this up. You have a significant other. They're out here on the outside of the box because you can't control that, right? You have kids. All right, they're on the outside of the box. You can't control that. You have a dog. They're on the outside of the box. You can't control that. Every time you add a variable, which becomes a constraint, you can't control what's going to happen with them. Hopefully they fit into your plans, but we all know best laid plans don't always go the way that we want them to go. You make sure that your box is filled with the things that you can control, the things you can do something about, the things that you can alter and organize and move about however you want to move them about. And inside of that box, what you're going to do is compartmentalize. Compartmentalization is a very simple concept. I did a podcast episode on this. It was all about taking each element of your life and putting them in their own drawers, kind of like you had a filing cabinet. Okay, the family stuff is in this cabinet, your work stuff is in this cabinet, your exercise is in this cabinet, your fitness is in this cabinet, your relationship with your friends is in this cabinet, and every other thing in life, they go in different filing cabinets. And compartmentalization is your ability to, all right, let me focus on this part now because I'm inside of this filing drawer. All right, put that away. Let me get into this drawer. Okay, that's done. Let me get into this drawer. That's done. Let me get into this drawer. So compartmentalization is your ability to just put things in their proper place and don't allow what's happening in your family life to bleed into what's happening at work, or what's happening with your friends to bleed into what's happening with your workouts. That's why you have the boxes, because you understand that the dogs are in this outside of the box. This is the part you can control. You stay in here. And the whole concept is controlling what you can control, regardless of the size of your box. Is what happens with a lot of people, is especially those of you who take on a lot of responsibility. Those of you who are prone to taking on a lot of responsibility, and you're prone to saying yes to things because people are always asking you to do stuff because you're a person of influence and a person of power and a person who can get things done. That's why you're always getting asked to do stuff, and you usually say yes because you get things done. Is that your box gets smaller and smaller because you're taking on all of these extra variables, and variables usually are in the form of people. Anything that's living is a variable. We'll not say plants, but any kind of pets or humans. Or every time you add more of them to your life, you have more variables. So you add a new staff member, that's a new variable, because now you got to pay attention to them, right? You got to answer their questions. They're going to mess up, and you got to go tend to how they messed up, and you got to fix it. You get a significant other. Now that's another person. You don't control them. Every time you get a kid, you got to deal with them, right? And now you're responsible for them for at least 18 to 24 years. So every time you add a human to your life in any way, you add a business partner. That's a variable, because if they call you, you probably want to take their call to see what they got to say, because you're in business with that person. So every time you add a human being to your life, or a pet to a lesser degree, but let's just keep it at anything living, any breathing thing, is that there's a new variable, and it's probably going to make your box a little bit smaller, meaning the things that you have 100% control over, which is not a human being, now it's a little bit smaller, and you have to compartmentalize, control what you can control, understand that your box has gotten smaller, and now let's work within that box. Now, inside of that box, which will be right here, this is where you got to move all of your disciplines. All of your disciplines, all your daily habits, all the things that you want to do, the same things the same way every time. The stuff that can fit in there fits in there. And here's the thing that you need to understand. The box that you had 10 years ago, when your box was all the way out here, you won't be able to fit all that stuff into this box 10 years later, because you have all these different constraints and variables in your life. So now you have to make some decisions as to what can fit in the box today as to what used to be able to fit in the box yesterday. Things will change. In other words, you have to prioritize. Look at everything that you have and ask yourself, okay, what can fit in here now knowing that things have changed. The situation is not the same as it was. I mean, we call this life, all right? Some people call it life getting in the way. This is not life getting in the way. This is you adjusting to life as it is, because you have variables, you have constraints, you got other people involved, and life is all about people. So there's nothing wrong with your constraints going up and your variables increasing because you added more people into your life. That's actually a good thing, because when you die, only thing that's going to matter is not if you did the same things the same way every time, or how much money you made, or how many trophies you accumulated. What's going to matter is the people who are around, right? What's going to matter is the relationships. So these things, this is a good thing that you have variables in the form of people who create constraints. It's just a matter of what adjustments can you make, knowing that you have these people around, knowing that you can't do the same things you were doing before, and controlling what you can control. So that's what the concept of the box is all about. So this hopefully will help some of you with your disciplines and understanding what can fit in my box, what cannot fit in my box, and not basically having eyes that are too big for your stomach. In other words, don't tell yourself that you can fit 100% of stuff in your box when your box is only big enough to fit 50% of the stuff. You got to make some choices as to what is going to fit and what is not going to fit. We call that prioritization. So that's the concept of the box. If any of you want to learn more about this, so I can help you more with it, then I'll tell you 2 ways you can reach out to me, or 2 ways you can get more from me. First of all, text me to get my daily motivation message free of charge every day straight to your phone. My number is 305-384-6894. And secondly, go to workonyourgame.com/30. That's my 30 days of discipline course. Inside of that course, you will learn a bunch of techniques, 30 days worth of techniques for how to start implementing the concept of the box. You get the discipline so that you can follow through on things and be more consistent, so that the things that you are going to do the same things the same way every time, you can fit them into your box, whatever it happens to be at this point in time in life. And you continually make adjustments based on where your box is at, because you'll have lifetime access to the course. That's workonyourgame.com/30. Workonyourgame.com/30. That's how you get access to my 30 days of discipline course. You can start it and take the course right now at that link. That link and my phone number for my daily motivation text down below in the description. Work on your game. Dre all